It's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as we have news regarding why Daniel Bryan chose to join AEW, The Rock is set to return to WWE for a match with Roman Reigns, and we have more news on talks between All Elite Wrestling and CM Punk. All that and more coming up in today's video, but first, let's take a look at this week's ratings for AEW Dynamite, as the promotion have once again smashed the 1 million mark on TNT. Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics is reporting that AEW Dynamite Fyter Fest Night 2 was watched by an average of 1.148 million viewers on TNT, which is up 12% from Night 1 last week. This makes this week's episode the third most viewed Dynamite in the show's history, and the second most viewed of this year. In terms of the key demo, AEW were up 10% from last week, going from a 0.4 to a 0.44. This represents roughly 575,000 viewers between the ages of 18 to 49, which is the target audience for advertisers. This is equal to the highest demo rating of the year for Dynamite. AEW have continued to make huge waves over the past couple of weeks since fans have returned to arenas, and there is currently a lot of buzz around the promotion following major names reportedly set to debut, which we'll get into a little bit later on. AEW hosts the Fight for the Fallen special next week, which is the last of the Welcome Back Tour shows, which could draw an even higher number if they play their cards right. Yesterday, former WWE and NXT superstar Velveteen Dream, who was released from the company in May of this year, was booked for his first independent appearance since his release. Dream was revealed to be on the card for an SWF wrestling show on September 11th later this year in an event called Home Sweet Home. Within the space of an hour, he was swiftly pulled from the show following complaints from fans, with an announcement from SWF owner Rob Fury being posted to Twitter. Dream, who was once tipped to be a future major player in WWE, had his career tainted after allegations of grooming minors and sending inappropriate messages. It's worth noting that Dream has denied the claims, but it seems that he's going to have quite the task being booked again, with even small promotions steering clear despite his national name value. Switchblade Jay White addressed his Slammiversary debut on last night's episode of Impact Wrestling, where he spoke of the Elite, which mostly consists of ex-Bullet Club members, a faction Jay White now leads. He claims the Elite are nothing but Bullet Club fans and said, "I couldn't pass up on the opportunity at Slammiversary to come out and say hello to the Bullet Club's greatest fans." At this point, the crowd cheered, and he says, "Well, I'm not talking about you guys. I was talking about the guys who are going around and throwing up two sweets like it's still 2013. Those guys are the true fans of the Bullet Club. Those guys are the true fans of Switchblade Jay White." White then went on to address the Good Brothers specifically, essentially calling them irrelevant without the Bullet Club. He added, "But I understand why they do that. You see, the Good Brothers have only been relevant when they can tie their name to Bullet Club. So I see why the Good Brothers are so desperate to rejoin. But Good Brothers, this is a new era of Bullet Club. This is my new era of Bullet Club. In my new era of Bullet Club, we have standards. I'm sorry, Good Brothers, you guys are simply not good enough anymore." Interestingly, and this is something I missed despite watching it 3 or 4 times, it was Don Callis and the Good Brothers who threw up a too sweet to Switchblade during the confrontation at Slammiversary, with Kenny Omega keeping his hands down. On the episode of Impact, Omega, Callis and the Good Brothers then confronted White, with Callis stating that he thinks White should ditch his position as the leader of the Bullet Club and beg them to join the Elite. Eventually, Omega and Callis left the stage, leading to the Good Brothers beating White down before X-Division wrestler Chris Bay came to Switchblade's aid before accepting his earlier invitation into the Bullet Club. This segment officially confirms that the Elite and the Bullet Club are set to feud, with some wondering whether they would end up on the same page. AEW revealed last night that Thunder Rosa has officially signed with the company. Rosa has appeared in AEW since September of last year, debuting as the NWA Women's World Champion. At the time, she was appearing whilst under contract with NWA, who has sent across various women's talent to All Elite Wrestling. It has been reported by Fightful that Rosa had requested her release from NWA as far back as 2020, but the request was rejected. They also revealed that in order to sign Rosa closer, a buyout of her current deal was agreed between AEW President Tony Khan and NWA President Billy Corgan, although the specifics of this deal have not been made public. Next up, following a report that CM Punk is in talks with AEW, we have another report from Fightful that claims they aren't the only ones to have reached out to Punk about a return to the ring, with Ring of Honor said to have thrown their name in the hat at some point. Ring of Honor was the home of CM Punk for many years before he joined WWE, and is where he truly made a name for himself as a future star. The promotion is said to have reached out to Punk in January 2020 about a potential return, with Marty Scurll, who was the booker at the time, said to have inquired about his services. These talks are said to have not gone very far, but people within ROH had heard that talks had been happening in some capacity, with storylines, opponents, and general plans being more important to Punk than the money on the table. Obviously, these talks fell through, and Marty ended up leaving the company shortly after due to, well, other reasons. And quickly, just before we continue, make sure you scroll down and drop a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any upcoming wrestling content as we head towards 20,000 subscribers. But now that you've done that, let's get on with the rest of the video. Next up, we have further updates on Daniel Bryan, who has reportedly signed with All Elite Wrestling. On the most recent episode of the Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer discussed the matter, revealing that the biggest factor that went into Bryan's decision was AEW's working relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling, which sees talent traded back and forth. The relationship was started in December last year when Kenta showed up to attack then IWGP United States champion Jon Moxley, kicking open the proverbial forbidden door. It was reported earlier in the year that whilst in WWE, Daniel Bryan had pushed for them to open talks with New Japan over a relationship of their own, with Bryan expressing a desire to work in Japan, but talks between the two promotions ended up falling through. Bryan's AEW debut appears to be set for the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite in September, and he could well be set for an appearance in Japan shortly after, potentially for a match at January's Tokyo Dome show Wrestle Kingdom. Next up, we have a report from the reliable Andrew Zarian from the Mat Men podcast that The Rock is set to return to WWE at the upcoming Survivor Series pay-per-view. Right now, it seems WWE's working plan is to have WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns defend his title against The Rock to headline next year's WrestleMania 38, and his return at the Survivor Series will likely plant the seeds for the match. The report states that The Rock is expected to appear on both Raw and SmackDown in the build-up to Mania, and USA Network officials have requested he appear on the post-Survivor Series episode of Raw. Survivor Series isn't until November, so plans could well change, but the Tribal Chief storyline with Roman Reigns is very family-orientated, with Reigns calling himself the head of the table in the Samoan dynasty family, with a confrontation with his cousin The Rock being the natural conclusion. What do you think of The Rock versus Roman Reigns headlining WrestleMania next year? Personally, I can't see there being a bigger possible match with all things considered, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. Following a report from Fightful this week that CM Punk is returning to wrestling, the internet has been abuzz with speculation as to the future of the straight-edge superstar. Since the initial report, which stated his most likely destination is AEW, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer has since confirmed that the talks are happening, and took to the Wrestling Observer forum to reveal that the two sides are still discussing potential dates, leading him to think that the deal is yet to be signed, and he said, "Things going on behind the scenes as far as talks about certain dates and such makes me think that this isn't signed. They have an understanding, and unless a blow-up, it's happening." It seems that there is currently a verbal agreement between Punk and AEW, with a few things yet to be ironed out. The former WWE champion has added fuel to the rumors after he posted a song to his Instagram story, a song which is famously used by the Chicago Bulls in the NBA, leading many to think that he's referring to Michael Jordan's return to the Bulls in 1995 after a short basketball stint. This is further backed up by a recent trademark filing from AEW, with them filing for the term "The First Dance," which could be a reference to Jordan's recent documentary The Last Dance. This is of course all speculation and should be taken with a grain of salt at this point, but Tony Khan is set to announce a quote major new live event this week on Dynamite, and could The First Dance be the name of this event, marking CM Punk's debut? Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And before you go, make sure you check out my 10 cancelled AEW plans video where I discuss CM Punk's history with AEW.